Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets don't know how to lose. A 3-game sweep in the West, including against former Net Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. Tyrese Martin fans rejoice. We dive into it all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms and let you know that you can continue to win all season long with FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And, Doug, where we get started is where we knew we would. 127-117. The Nets blow out the Phoenix Suns, led by Tyrese Martin, 30-point scorer. We just did a whole episode being flabbergasted, and we're going to do it again today.
Yeah, we said, like, look, well, I offered like a couple $100 if you were going to put a video mashup of us just being exacerbated on the podcast and like just not knowing what was going on here. Add another. Hopefully, no one got started on that because you're going to have another. You're going to have another chance to be able to add some stuff to it here. This defies explanation. It's absolutely insane what's happening with the Nets right now. They started off. Let's conservatively say the 18.5 over-under win projection from all major books, including our friends over at FanDuel. And they're already basically halfway there. Like, they're already halfway there, 19 games into the season. This time, as plus 9.5 favorites against the Suns, who went, we were like, oh, maybe KD and Beal will sit out on the second half of the back-to-back. Nope, they both played. That was a full-strength Suns team, and they beat them, like, kind of easily. Like, this is insane. We have a ton of stuff to talk about. This was like almost weirdly like a statement win for like the team in a just energy, just system fashion. We'll talk about Tyrese Martin too, but this was easily their best win of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Just because, just sort of like the way it played out, the way they played, how they got it done, and again, just like put another check in the we don't get it box about what's happening with this team this season. And in true Nets fashion, it just can't go any other way. Right when they zig when everyone thinks they're going to zag, and it's always the opposite direction of what you think is probably good for the franchise.
It is real. It's unbelievable. And no Cam Thomas in this game, which we already talked about. That goes into the bucket of when we thought, well, you take away Dennis Schroeder, and what's this team going to do? Well, they already proved they can win those games. Now you say, well, you take away their leading scorer. What are they going to do? It doesn't matter. Don't have Nick Claxton. Don't have Noah Clowney, who's a bench player, but has recently shown how much he can contribute. Doesn't matter. Even in a game, by the way, too, where Kevin Durant, as you mentioned, he's back. So is Bradley Beal. It's 33 minutes. He goes 10 of 18 from the field, goes 3 of 6 from deep, goes 7 of 10 at the line, 30-point performance. It's not a game where you say, oh, well, Kevin Durant had one of the all-time worst performances for his career or something. No, everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing for the opposition too, and yet this team keeps winning. And you said we'll talk about some of the specific performances, but it's Thanksgiving. I've said a lot of things. Might as well throw it into the Adam will be wrong bucket now as we've been, chronicling ourselves over the course of this year. I'm pivoting to this team. Is too fun to watch. They're too good. And I don't care. Like I keep talking about how, well, don't worry, they can correct and they'll make trades and they'll get down to the bottom and all those things. And they probably will. That's probably still going to be what happens. But I'm now pivoting to who should the Nets maybe think about trading for when it comes to the deadline this season. You can't be playing this well under your head coach. You can't be beating this many good teams and still come back to, so when we get rid of all these guys, it's too much fun. And I know, like, even the fan base that desperately wants the tank, and we're among those guys, at some point you have to go, or maybe we just keep winning basketball games. I don't know. It's insane. And you and I have talked about time and time again, the inability to sit down to watch a Nets game and not get pumped up when they start playing well, when they start winning. As it comes down the stretch, I wasn't thinking, gosh, I hope the Suns can make a comeback here. It was great. Continue to pour it on, Tyrese Martin. I want to see this team dominate the Phoenix Suns. Coast trip.
It kind of depends if you subscribe to the life is short or life is long crowd, right? Like if life is short, then we want the Nets to like win every game because you don't know how many more chances you're going to get to see your favorite team win. If you're like part of the life is long crowd, you want them. These losses, sorry, these wins are maddening because you're just like, well, what's going on? We want Cooper Flag, we want Ace, Dylan Harper, like these guys that are sitting at the top of the draft. That could be sort of franchise altering players. It's hard. Like, the truth probably sits somewhere in between. Is that like right now, I think in the short term, you're like, oh, we'll take the wins. In the long term, when you see Cooper Flag just becoming like, a perennial all NBA player and a franchise changing guy, and you think we messed up our chance to, or the Nets messed up their chance to actually get him, then that's a sting. It's a very difficult push and pull. When it comes to this game, it's funny. Like if anything sort of like sums up the season, I'll give you something. I'll give you 3 names that are going to sum up the season for like what's going on with the Nets here. And it comes in the form of sort of like who scored in this game. We're going to leading scorer in this game, Devin Booker. You're like, that one makes sense. Okay. 8 for 18 from the field, 12 for 13 from the line. The second 2 leading scorers in this game, Kevin Durant, like you mentioned, 7 turnovers, which I want to talk about a little bit about. Yes. And then Tyrese Martin with 30 points, who basically the guy's like taken like 6 shots in his whole life. And now he just shoots 8 for 10 from the field. Just can't miss. Looks like prime Steph. And you're like, what is happening? And I was funny too. I watched this game on the Suns broadcast on League Pass. So I like to watch on the other broadcast because I sometimes like to see like sort of what other teams. I like the Nets broadcast team as much as anybody, but sometimes I just want to like get a sense of like what other teams are saying about them. The Suns broadcast was exacerbated with what was happening here. They're like, what is going on with this team? Tyrese Martin, they even couldn't get it. And it was just kind of fun to watch from that perspective because it's not just us, right? It's like even these teams that are preparing for these games to do this thing, even they're kind of looking at this in like sort of a sense of awe and be like, and I have a couple of theories about why this is happening, but it's just funny to see it from that point of view because it's not just us. There's other people just being like, we don't get it. It doesn't make sense. It defies explanation.
The Suns broadcast, and to your point, no one can believe it when you're watching it in real time, but also they were thoroughly enjoying it. That broadcast was like, hey, if Tyrese Martin, because by the way, if you're covering the NBA and someone like a journeyman player who was in the G League last year, when they're cooking like that, it is just fun. It's just a fun game to watch, and it's a fun environment to be around. So while the Brooklyn Nets get that next win, they take down the Phoenix Suns. Tyrese Martin has this incredible game. There's a lot of other things going on here. You mentioned about the turnovers with Kevin Durant that we can get into. We can also get into the Ben Simmons game and what his performance looked like without some of these other key contributors around for the Nets, not to mention that at a minimum, Cameron Johnson was back out there and playing for Brooklyn, which matters after he comes off the ankle tweak we all got concerned about. It's just everything is not going perfectly from a roster, injury, health, performance standpoint this season. It's only going perfectly from Jordi Fernandez's standpoint as a head coach and what he's capable of making this team show up and do night over night. We'll continue the improbable discussion that is the Brooklyn Nets coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get into that, head over to our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So much action. I mean, if you're listening to this Thursday morning, you got a ton of action going on here for these Thanksgiving Day games. You got the Giants going right now against the Cowboys. Lions, always big favorites here at home. That doesn't always happen here on Thanksgiving. It's happening here on FanDuel and in real life. Going there over on the app, there's all this different stuff you can do in the app. You can do live betting, of course. You can do all the player props you could ever really imagine. Even if you want to get into NBA awards right now, Jordi Fernandez 13th overall in NBA Coach of the Year odds. I could climb. I actually thought that would climb overnight after this win. Kind of just totally sick that that's even the case. Just some of what you can grab over on FanDuel. You can also grab $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 real money bet over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the improbable win for the Brooklyn Nets, reminder, check out the newsletter as well. You can get that every single day, talking about not only some of the topics from the podcast, but even a little bit beyond. Who knows how far afield I may get when we talk about what's possible for the Nets this season. Check that out as well. Let's just touch on Kevin Durant here briefly on the 7 turnovers and his performance and what that meant to you or how it was caused, because we do know that coming into this game, Kevin Durant did very clearly tell the media that he is a net for life. And maybe that contributed to it. There's a couple of key moments when he just got confused about which jersey he was wearing, helping Brooklyn get across the line here.
Yeah, look, one reason the Nets I think there's two things that are happening here that the Nets have raised the floor significantly and the reason they're either in pretty much every game or just winning these games sort of outright, even when they're underdogs. And this game identified two of those things like in pretty stark detail. So the first is on defense, they just never stop, right? They never stop on defense. They're constantly moving. They press at times just to get into the opposing ball handler, even whether it's Schroeder, whether it's Ira Williams, like they just pick up ball handlers almost full court, even if it's just being annoying, right? Like it's like they're not going for the steals, but they're just being annoying. And then when they get like with the Suns last night, they were getting into the ball, into the dribble so it's like really hard to get into your offense sometimes like that. Sometimes it can lead to easy shots under the basket, right? Which we've seen, but it really stops some of these teams from getting into the flows. And then when they would get over the half court line, they would just immediately double these guys. Like they would just throw really fast doubles, switch doubles onto guys like Durant and just cause them all kinds of problems. Probably just being super annoying. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is not what they usually see on a night-to-night basis. You don't see this from sometimes like really good teams, frankly, because like some of and this is not a knock, but some of the superstars just aren't going to do this on a night-to-night basis. They're not just going to go, I'm not picking you up full court. I'm not going to just, constantly blitz double these guys all night long. But the Nets guys have a group of guys who just are willing to do that because like, hey, this is just what it's going to take to win. And so when you see this happening, it really causes problems for other teams. Like Durant's 7 turnovers some of them were just like super frustrating, right? They were just super frustrating. They threw doubles at him. Just wasn't able to get out of them quick enough. And they just weren't able to just kind of get into the flow of their offense at times for some multiple possessions where they couldn't even get shots off. Like the Suns couldn't even this is like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. They couldn't even get shots off into their offense because the Nets were just being so pestery. So I want to talk about something on the offensive end too, but just from that standpoint, like that is one thing that Jordi Fernandez has clearly preached here, which is, hey, we might not have the best personnel in the world, but we have some athletic defenders. We have guys who can switch everything 1 to 5 pretty much. And at that point, we need to just never stop for 48 minutes on defense and make it so annoying for them. And it's and again, sometimes it leads to easy baskets, but sometimes it just leads to a lot of turnovers from some of these guys. And this is like what we saw last night.
Yeah, and I think specifically, the difference between coming across the line with 24 seconds on the shot clock and normally you're getting into your offensive set with 18 seconds, worst if you're taking your time getting across half court. Maybe you even have 19 seconds, 20 seconds. If all of a sudden it's 16 or 15, and then there's some pestering. If it's 12 instead of 17, right? Those 4 or 5 seconds are a big difference to what's the set that we're running here? What are the actions that we need to get through? And then if you're athletic enough and you're fighting over screens and you're staying in front of your matchups, all of a sudden it breaks down a little bit quicker and you don't have to squint too hard and think about when the Nets didn't have good offensive sets that they were running and Cam Thomas would sometimes be on the ball and kind of looking around, right? I don't know where I'm supposed to go with this. Either it's a blitzing double team or maybe it's just me one-on-one, but I am 8 feet further out from where I want to be when I start to get into my action as I take on even a one-on-one defender. So the things that the Nets are doing, I agree with you from its effort standpoint. And I hate to put that as like something that sounds so easy that can be so effective in the NBA, because when you're really good and you have superstars, more of your shots go in than not. You don't have to be totally dialed up every possession. But if this team like the Nets can consistently galvanize themselves around the idea, we're so annoying that it actually gets us 5 to 7 points in the margins on a nightly basis. And that seems to be the case night over night. What was the offensive end that you saw here for Brooklyn?
Yeah, so the offensive end is that they're running a scheme. I think we talked about a little bit of this yesterday, but they're running a scheme that really is personnel independent, right? And so not a lot of other teams can say this. Like, and most times it would be incorrect, right? Like, so if you are a team with Jokic or Tatum or Giannis or any of these guys, you're going to run LeBron.
You don't say like fit into your role, Tatum. Don't get out of the system.
The system is them. They're the system. Like those guys are the system. And you'd be insane not to do it. Like it's just not a egalitarian, like kind of like approach to what's happening here. It's like they're the system. And so, but the problem is when they leave, the system has to change because you can't run like a Giannis-based system when Giannis isn't on because like Bobby Portis can't do that, right? So that makes sense on a very high level because you do want those great players a night in, night out, because that's really the best way to win the championship. Is like systems of one are the way to do it. The Jokic's, the Giannis's, even Tatum's a little different, but like you get what I mean. The Nets, excuse me, run a system where it doesn't kind of matter who's out there. They're running high motion, right? They're coming up and setting tons of screens all the time, constantly screening. Everyone has to be screening all the time, whether they're coming out of the block and coming up like these pistol sets. They ran this crazy one, which was like a double come for the high screen. Then they ran it into a horn set. Then they crossed, and then they didn't even get a basket out of it. But I haven't even seen this. I was actually going to text Lucas Kaplan last night. I was like, "What was that?" It was like the 3-minute mark left in the third quarter. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen this thing before. It was out of a timeout. Anyway, point being, for them, there's a ceiling on it because you don't have the superstar, but there's such a high floor on it because everyone comes in and just goes, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. If you're off ball, you're screening and you're either popping out for a shot, you're trying to find someone backdoor, or you're rescreening to get someone else to get another shot. That's it. And it's constant. So you can actually just put in the Tyrese Martins of the world every once in a while. And at least everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Last year, it was like offenses, Cam Thomas clear out, Mikal Bridges clear out. Everyone kind of stands around in the corners. And then when those guys be off the court, like you had no chance to even score because no one else can even do it. And so anyway, that's such a floor raising thing. Watch the Nets night in, night out. It does not matter who is out in the court. They are running the same stuff every possession, which is not like predictable. It's just high movement, high screen. Everyone will find you if you keep working. That is a thing that can work.
And by the way, you made mention of last season when you're clearing out and getting these single possessions for Mikal Bridges and going, well, that's not the guy you do this for. This is not the offense is the main player. The Nets didn't have those guys last year either.
It's the shot clock grenade because they can never get into anything. Of course. And so that's just not the case here.
This was it was an absolute mess a year ago, and it's the antithesis of that this season. And you're right. If you can, I hate to say it, keep it on a very simple level. It's like if you can get the buy-in from guys that this is worth it, that this type of, and I think when you have the right veterans in the group, because you do have Cam Thomas, he's the one guy that has this trajectory of being able to be a potential, star in the league. So that is a little bit different. But all of the veterans buy into it and get it. So they're setting the example and the tone of it. And then all the role players can step right in and say, I see exactly what this is. I see that one cog comes out in the wheel, and I step in and replace that cog, and everyone's having success. We haven't even made mention of the fact that Cam Thomas is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks and what that's going to look like. And the irony, of the tweet that I put out after the injury update where I said, so worried about the tank. Well, then all of a sudden, look what happens. And then the Nets follow that up by going out and beating the Phoenix Suns. Coming up here in a second, not only do we want to talk about Ben Simmons' performance, not only do we need to discuss what time we started this podcast at, but we'll also take a little look forward for the Brooklyn Nets as they prepare to get through Thanksgiving and then into the next leg of their schedule. We'll do that all coming up next.
All right, before we get into that, I'll tell you about our friends over at Skylight Frames. Look, you want to celebrate and stay connected with people who are far away. Maybe you're missing someone this holiday season and you want them to be part of the festivities from afar. You'll get those loved ones maybe aren't in the same town. You wish they could be close to you. This is where you got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone. Watch them appear in seconds. Super easy to use. Setup's just going to take you less than 60 seconds. It's got seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. You got no account or subscription required. Love to hear that. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. We're living in the future, folks. It's the fastest and easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop and to feel so much more connected to you. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA.
All right, as we tie a pretty little bow on the 127-117 victory for the Brooklyn Nets over the Phoenix Suns heading into the Thanksgiving holiday, I do just want to remind everybody that now if the Brooklyn Nets need to get into the trade deadline and need to really push product, well, now Tyrese Martin's probably at least worth a first-round pick. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a late mid-second as well, maybe a player to be named later. We're not sure. Absolutely incredible performance. Just want to make sure I reiterate that. One quick sidebar, too, before we talk about Ben Simmons. Some people say that Doug and I have a developed schedule when it comes to the podcast, and we show up and we do it. Some people listened to the podcast yesterday where Doug acknowledged that he forgot the schedule for recording the podcast. And yours truly basically forgot that we were recording the podcast this morning, and yet we made it anyway, and our hero's journey continues. We're nothing if not professional. What were your thoughts on Ben Simmons or on me? It can go either way, because guess what? Social media will chronicle the tale of Doug trying to track me down.
Well, my main thought was he better be dead, because otherwise this is ridiculous. Like, as it's 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, I was like, only acceptable excuse now is death. And
did it resonate when my response was, yeah, it was weird. I just woke up kind of naturally a little bit.
And I'd give the eulogy, but it would include like didn't show up for the last pod. Like it would that would be part of it. It wouldn't be I wouldn't lead off with it, but I'd just be like, and just as a note, like we were supposed to do a pod that day and he kind of like didn't show up. But anyway, he'll be missed.
No big deal. I soloed like a hero.
There was the Simmons Experience.
R.I.P.
Yeah, RIP. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, no, don't worry. We didn't miss a day. The Ben Simmons Experience is really pretty unique here, because it's so funny. It's almost like he's contractually obligated to take a bunch of shots early and then just never do it again. And it's like he gets paid for shots in the first 4 minutes, and then like doesn't get any money for the shots in the last few minutes, or like anything after that, because so many games he'll start off where just super aggressive, 8 points in like 2 minutes in this game, and then finished with 14, still like one of, I think maybe a season high on 7 for 8 shooting, but it just kind of like disappears to the point where I thought he played really well in this game. But even Schroeder at one point was just like basically cursing him out, because he's got Devin Booker on as the low man on the block and kicks out to Schroeder, and it ends up a turnover. And Schroeder's like, what are you doing? Like, he's like not even expecting the pass, because he's like basically in.
Nobody would.
I think Schroeder yelled at him, like, put him in the effing basket or something like that. He was like, put him in the effing basket. Like, what are you doing? So,
in German,
I thought this was like another, it was just like another sort of Ben Simmons experience where I'm still happy to like watch him play or whatever. And I want it to get better. But every time it's like, is he going for a triple double in this game? He's going to score 22 points, but then he just kind of stops shooting. And it's just a funny experience with him.
Oh, no, 100%. And he has the 9 rebounds and the 8 assists, and he only had 2 turnovers in the game. But to your point,
he played well. He played well. I'm not taking a dig at him. I just think this is like the holistic Ben Simmons experience where we are on this. It's like, why doesn't it happen more? Even his own teammates don't understand it sometimes.
Yeah, this is the classic. When you look at the box score at the end of the game, you go, oh, good game from Ben Simmons. But if you watch how quickly he got 8 shots up relative to the rest of the game and the way it unfolds, you go, oh, it was another one of those type of games for Ben Simmons where the little flash he shows you early doesn't carry over. And the one thing I'll say is, from that standpoint, it's not to drag him. It's a good game, a good performance from him. Excuse me. The team wins. It's awesome. But a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who bring even more than Cam Johnson, Dennis Schroeder is a veteran who's played on some high-level teams. I think his voice carries some weight here. Once it gets down to the player level, you've heard Jordi Fernandez say what he wants to do. You hear some of the post-game interviews from Ben Simmons. When on a player level, in game, they're giving you a look like, hey, man, what are we doing here? I think that does start to cross a threshold where it needs to either start to happen more consistently, or you will see some adverse reaction from your teammates, because now the turnover, is that kind of on Dennis Schroeder for not being there for that? No. Because no one playing NBA basketball or basketball pickup style would anticipate a player being that close to the rim with that defensive assignment and say, let me get this ball out of my hand. So that is the journey of one Ben Simmons. And then you did get, by the way, 29 from Schroeder in this game with no Cam Thomas, 4 and 9 from beyond the arc and 9 and 9 from deep. And then maybe the footnote here that Cam Johnson, he played. He was 3 of 11. He's 1 of 7 from deep, got to the line a few times, but did give you 8 and 6 rebound from a rebound and assist perspective. Just good to see that he was out there immediately following what in years past would have been. I know we're going to talk about Thomas here, but that would have been Cam Johnson going to be out for 3 to 6 weeks here. We'll see how the ankle holds up, etc. Instead, he bounced right back, which is a good sign for him.
Yeah, excellent sign. Just to keep him healthy, got to keep the wheels on for him for sure. I mean, there's growing sentiment. I've seen a couple other pieces of like sort of like sideline-ish reporting where it's like, hey, the Nets could be sellers sooner than later here, because I like a recognition that that this is maybe frankly winning too many games. That being said, I mean, if Tyrese Martin scoring 30 points, like what are you going to do? Like these are the tanking lineups. These are the tanking lineups. Like these are them.
We did it.
Like
we put the lineup out there to lose.
Yeah, short of just putting in like Dariq Whitehead and making him run around for 32 minutes. Like, I don't really know like what else they can really do here. And so it's, if everyone's just going to really play hard, then, and Jordi Fernandez is committed to winning, because like he's not going to go out. Like he's got, by the way, smart on him. Like he's got his own resume to build here, which he's built very quickly. I mean, like even like Bobby Marks is tweeting about him. Like there's people have recognized very quickly that like this guy gets it. And this is a long-term guy the Nets have. The Nets got the right one here. And he's not going to go out there and just take L's. So I'm not actually sure how much more they can do, except for just kind of hope regression comes for us all here, and talent ends up winning the day, because the Nets still on a talent level do not have anywhere close to a lot of these other teams.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, that hasn't seemed to matter too much so far.
So we'll talk about Cam Thomas, because it's 3 to 4 weeks with the injury. We'll get into that when we come back from the weekend, because it's going to be a while before he's back on the court anyway. So we'll have time to get into that. The two things are, one, I wonder, and I think we'll talk about this more and more, it's what is the value of identifying a coach that feels like this is a guy that can be with this organization for the long haul. I'm not saying it's worth missing out on what you feel like is a generational draft class at the top by not tanking this season. But for an organization that hasn't had those guys, and we talked about the Kenny Atkinson and now Jordi Fernandez kind of bookends of that journey, there has to be a pretty high value placed on that. Not every organization has this type of coach on their bench and feeling like no matter what, we always have a chance to win games. And then maybe we now all of a sudden actually have something else in our corner, attracting superstars to want to come here again when that happens. And there's no way that every single one of these players, and the ones that maybe matter most, guys that could be traded in Schroeder, Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, I guarantee wherever they end up, and when they talk to other guys around the league, it's not going to be, there's going to be nothing negative coming out of their mouths in their experience with Jordi Fernandez. So maybe, as I mentioned over on X last night, the only way that this team gets this tank back on track is if you go with an injury update that sounds something like Jordi Fernandez to miss 4 to 6 weeks was a severe case of being too good at the job. Because that's what this comes down to. He's too good of a coach. He's getting too much out of these players, and it means that you cannot account for losses when they should come on the schedule.
Yeah, look, when you run set systems that, again, are, like I said, personnel independent, or you just like defensively have the right personnel for it, and then you have offensively just like a lot of wings, which is basically what they have. Like, this is what's going to be. Again, I still subscribe to the talent wins out, and they're just going to hit a stretch where Tyrese Martin isn't scoring 30 points or something like that, right? Like, I have to believe that to be the case. If it's not the case, then I will just say that I don't understand any of it. So I already kind of am there with I don't really get all of it. Like, because I'll tell you right now, systematically, that doesn't explain it all here. Like it fits into an explanation for sure. But it doesn't really get all the way there. There's been like some lucky stuff here, but it's also maybe I'm just under counting effort. I like effort. Maybe it's sad to say, but like maybe that just does get you so far in the NBA, and a lot of their teams can't really dial it up for 48 every single night. And I mean, maybe that's it. The Nets have like a narrative street. The Nets have lots of guys with narratives that that they should continue to play very hard, whether it's Simmons playing at the end of a contract here. I'm not sure if he's ever going to get another NBA contract. Like, you have these veterans who wouldn't mind landing on a team that probably can win. And then you have guys like Cam Thomas who are playing for a contract themselves, or you just have these journeyman dudes who were just maybe who were second thoughts in other trades that were just kind of pawned off onto the Nets as like salary dumps or trade fillers or whatever. And they're all playing their ass off because they got something to prove. I mean, like basically everyone but Claxton has something to prove here, right? Because Claxton got paid and he's played fine too. Like, he's actually been one of their best players. But everyone else, from either getting paid or getting paid next, has something to really, really play for here. And that maybe that just counts for more than I've ever really kind of factored in.
Yeah. It's coaching times effort plus impact of season, right? I mean, like, that's what, from a player standpoint, if you put those things together, it means that they're a really hard out every single night in the NBA slate. And it doesn't mean that it's something different when you get to playoff basketball and when basketball matters most, right?
So, God, I hope they don't make the playoff. My God, like if they made the playoff,
no, and I just mean like, good, well, who knows? And then you throw out history and you say, let's see where this ride takes us. No, but just that regular season matters so much differently to teams in different ways, right? Championship level teams aren't thinking. It's one of the problems the NBA has, right? They don't care as much about the regular season. We're just trying to get healthily to the playoffs, and that's where our run begins.
That's actually,
and maybe they're willing to sacrifice, hey, we lost to the Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. Yes, we're all on the court and we should win this game. Is it going to matter to our journey at the end of the year? Do we look back and go, remember that game against the Brooklyn Nets that we lost? Tyrese Martin, damn it, we needed that one. No, it probably won't. But for the Brooklyn Nets, for me, for the fan base, you go, look at this. We went out west and swept these teams, beat the Warriors down 18, took care of the Phoenix Suns without Cam Thomas, without some of our key contributors. That's what I think the big difference is. And it probably feels similar on a player level as well. Hey, we're going out on a nightly basis. We don't care about what happens in the playoffs. We're not going to be in the playoffs, but we can keep making other teams, sometimes on a national stage, look kind of foolish when they're losing to the team that's supposed to be one of the worst in the league, yet we come out and take it to you and get these wins. That's why I throw my hands up and say, I'm enjoying it. I'm no longer questioning and trying to solve the science on this. I just want to watch it and see how far it goes before we think it gets back to the original plan and what the ultimate goal is here for Brooklyn.
I think like to get out of here, but I think a playoff analog to this would be like what the Heat did a couple of years, where it was like they were completely undermanned with Spo and Jimmy Butler, and Butler went nuts. And they, the bubble finals run that they had, and then the run they had a couple of years ago is the 8th seed, where they barely scrape in the play-in and then make it all the way to the finals, right? And like that's one where you're also throwing your hands up. You're like, how's it working? We're like, we're not sure. Caleb Martin just turned into like, the next coming of Klay Thompson. We don't like, other than that, like it's a little hard to explain, but that's like the playoff version of it, where it's the math doesn't make sense. The analyzing doesn't make sense. And yet here we are where they've won another game and now they're in the finals. And I think like the Nets are kind of having an analog season to that, which is sometimes just you can run really kind of crazy hot for shorter stretches. Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We're going to get out of here. Adam showed up. Thankfully, we were able to get the podcast we're ending it before 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Total miracle based on what was happening an hour and a half ago. Oh, you muted yourself. Well, Adam tried to say, never mind. No, don't even bother. Adam tried to say something funny. He tried to say something funny. He was on mute. We're not going to do it. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On. That's wherever you listen.
You can't stop me. The terror in Doug's eyes trying to perform a podcast by himself. He couldn't handle it. But also, when I opened my eyes this morning and realized I wasn't quite where I needed to be, I still said to myself, hey, a well-spent day brings happy sleep. And that is Lenny Da Vinci.
One of the all-time great, rest in peace, one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.